we are here for Bible study, so
Indeed.
I suppose we yeah, best get to that.
So,
Uh,
who do you want to start?
I suppose that well, I don't actually know which one of us started last time.
I'll just kick off if you want,
Uh, yeah, all right.
and then you can do the next one if we get around to that. So,
Yeah, yeah.
Genesis 8, and God remembered Noah.
Yes, remember to read the preface.
Oh, sorry, yes.
I,
Oh,
I
it's a
like
different
to
one
I
up, you
like to
see.
read the
So,
preface first.
because are you sharing
Or
your?
does yours not have a preface?
No, you're
Oh no,
sharing
I've
your screen.
forgotten to share my screen.
Yeah, that's why I've
Ah,
got
no,
another
that's
one up.
important for
So I
the
should have
for the
said.
people watching the video. Ah, yes. My goodness. Only the height of professionality
if you if you
here in the Lobster Kingdom.
why don't you drop me a link and then I'll. But otherwise, it does flash sometimes and
Oh yes,
go
I
black.
can send you a link as well, yeah, so that you can scroll through it with me and copy. My goodness, it's 11 o'clock at night for you, and we spent so long waffling on about geography and French
I
holidays,
enjoy.
and
Oh, no, I
I mean
enjoyed
it
it.
was a lovely conversation. I certainly enjoyed it, but it's getting rather late at night for you, and well, I'm not so sure that our audience was interested. We may have to clip that into two separate videos just to
Perhaps, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
because
anyway,
I feel like the sort of folks who'd want to watch one wouldn't necessarily want to watch the other.
yeah. Well, if you come in for a Bible study, you're not too keen on learning about Alabama and English
Random,
geography, the kind of
yeah,
weather.
yeah.
Anyway, I'll kick
Oh yeah,
off.
well, you speaking of the weather, there's a bloody great thunderstorm
Oh,
right outside my window.
yeah. Well, it's not very
Yes,
much
so
not very much like that over here. I'll tell you.
all right. So I suppose we'll get on. I'll read the preface and you can read the rest of the chapter.
Okay.
The flood ceases. Noah sends forth a dove, which returns with an olive leaf. He releases all living things from the ark. He offers sacrifices. Seed time, harvest, and seasons are assured.
Okay. Then God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and
Wait
the
a
rain
minute,
from.
assuaged?
How do you pronounce that?
America, we'd say assuaged.
Assuaged. Yeah, I've always struggled to
Waters
pronounce that. You're probably
assuaged. They
correct.
receded. They.
Mm, okay. The fountains also of the deep
Let's
and the
get.
windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained, and the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the seventh month, and on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. And in the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. And it came to pass at the end of the 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made, and he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro, until the waters were dried up from the earth. And he sent forth a dove from him, to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. And he put forth his hand, and took her, and pulled her in unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came into him in the evening, and, lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. And God spoke unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou, and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, be fruitful, and multiply upon the earth. And Noah went forth, and his sons and his wife, and his sons' wives with him. And every beast, every creeping thing, and every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth, after their kinds, went forth out of the ark. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast, and every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savour. The Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing, everything living, as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seedtime and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. There we go.
Yes.
So any thoughts that you have?
Alright, so well, I was about to ask you if any of that caught your attention in particular. The only thing that I particularly have to mention is when sorry. When it's... Hold on, where does it... Ah, yes.
Well, I was going to say...
For the imagination of man's heart is evil from youth. When it mentions that, it's sort of interesting because that reminds me of the sort of classic, or the sort of the old concept of... well, original sin, I guess, might be part of it, but sort of the fundamental sort of evil, or at least, well, yeah, I suppose there's not exactly a better word for that. The sort of the fundamentally evil aspect of sort of human nature.
And
you know, that humans are greedy and lustful and all that.
And reading through these sort of 8 chapters of Genesis, it does repeatedly mention kind of how man... It does repeatedly mention about the fallen state of man, doesn't it? And I suppose that's not surprising, considering it includes the fall of Adam. I mean...
Well, yes, but of course, I think it's also important and fair to point out that those words are not exactly used explicitly, you know. It doesn't really say, it just says that man is evil. Yeah. It does not say that man has been made evil, so
yeah.
You know, I feel like the fall of Adam is maybe something that's bigged up in an inappropriate way. I feel like even Adam was made with this, you know, with his soul like that, and it's just sort of an important aspect of humanity that we've got free will and stuff.
Well, I'll offer... Well, I suppose free will doesn't necessarily conflict with original sin, the concept of original sin, because you're still... It's saying...
I mean, that's true, but, what was I gonna say? What was I gonna say? I feel like... What's it? Because you're right. It's certainly true that, like, you know, like, the concept of free will does not really conflict with the concept of original sin in, like, a deeply meaningful way. It just strikes me as being sort of improper, at least so far as, you know, like, you have it with Catholics, where they believe that, like, a baby can go to hell if it dies before it is baptized.
Yeah, and I mean...
No, like, that absolutely is wrong. There certainly is an age when people become accountable for their actions.
Yeah.
It certainly
Yeah.
is not from the moment of birth.
Well, I'll add as well that even the concept of Calvin's total depravity, that man would always, in every single situation, choose sin, does also not necessarily conflict with free will, because it kind of says, yes, people have free will, but they always choose sin, which I don't agree with personally, but it's just kind of, I just wanted to
Well,
put that
I
out there.
feel like, well, also, I feel like, I'm glad that you mentioned that, but I don't know that that's, what's it, like, if people will always choose something, then I feel like that sort of does negate free will. I feel like you can say that sort of thing about an individual, like, oh yes, he has free will, but he is going to do X, Y, Z, based off of his past actions. But I feel like you can't say that about people in general because occasionally, there will be some few individuals who will surprise you, and so I just feel that's
Mm. I was only just
sorry if my thoughts are not entirely.
no, that's fine. I was only just suggesting or saying like a Calvinist interpretation, I suppose. And another approach, I guess, which may be more appealing to you, which I kind of thought of, is if we look at, so for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. That doesn't necessarily mean it's from his youth. So surely in his age, he learns to kind of deal with sort of his
Well,
heart being
yes,
evil.
that is certainly. Well, I'm glad that you pointed that out because that is something that is something that I think is rather important, and what's it like? Well, sort of, for instance, there is the typical phenomenon of like, oh, children are so sweet until they go through puberty and then they become monsters. That's a classic concept for a pretty good reason.
Mm.
And also, it's like in my church, the youngest age that we will baptize somebody at is about 8 years old
Mm.
because we feel like because that's like the beginning of development in a lot of important ways, and so that's basically when they can, like, they're still not fully accountable for their actions. They won't be until they're about 18 years old, but that's at least when they begin to become accountable for their actions.
Yeah. And then do you have like a
That's when that sort of. Oh, go on.
and do you have a confirmation then about later on then, or is
Well,
that?
yes, it's the confirmation. The confirmation usually happens on the same day. It's all part of one
Oh,
ceremony.
okay.
Uh,
But one thing, have you got any other last thoughts on that bit? I do have something else to say about the chapter.
oh, on. Okay, well. Oh yeah, well, that one thing that I just remembered is what's it like? I think it's sort of interesting that both a raven and a dove are released, and it's the dove that comes back with the olive leaf, and the raven comes back with nothing, because in many, like in the Mesopotamian versions of this story, it's a raven that comes back with something, in the Mesopotamian flood myth and like the Babylonian flood myth. So,
Mm. So,
I feel like that. I wonder then, if this was something that actually happened then, that there was uh, a raven and a dove, or I wonder if Noah really did just send out a dove and some scholar, later added the raven in order to sort of subtly jab at the Babylonians.
yeah, well maybe perhaps it's a difference of culture. I don't know what the Babylonians thought of ravens as compared to doves, but doves in Western culture tend to be viewed as sort of symbols of peace, don't they?
Well, yeah, but that sort of is a what's it? That is sort of a product of Semitic culture. That's something that is a bit of a. It wasn't something that was always a part of European culture. That's something that was brought in from the Arabs and the Jews when Christianity came over.
Oh, yeah, I've no idea how. its origin.
Like the Vikings, for instance, highly esteemed ravens, and as far as I'm aware, the Babylonians did as well. Probably because just the hunter-gatherer origins of humans. Well, actually, no. You know what? Now that I mention it, even in Europe, in the United Kingdom, you've got the Tower of Ravens, don't you? You've got like an entire building, and you've got like an entire like royal official that is dedicated to just feeding and maintaining a population of ravens in London.
Yes, in the Tower of London.
Because there was some prophecy. Yeah.
Go on.
Some prophecy that the city would not fall until the last raven left the tower.
Yeah, that's the one. So that's quite funny, really, because yeah, ravens are seen as more of a, I'm not sure, like a symbol of death, or not death, but I don't know.
Yeah, but they're also highly intelligent, and they're also a symbol of they're highly intelligent. They're somewhat generous as well, in the sense that they reciprocal. You know, like if you are kind to a raven, he will be kind to you back. He will bring you like little trinkets and things.
Yeah.
You can make friends with a raven, which you can't with most birds, if only because they're less intelligent than ravens. And ravens also are important to hunter-gatherer cultures because, because ravens are scavengers, they often lead predators like humans, wolves, bears, to populations of game animals like deer and beavers and things. The raven knows that there will be something left over for him to eat, so he often, helps humans find game. And that's probably that plus their just general intelligence is probably the reason why they are highly esteemed in so many different cultures spanning from, like the Middle East through to Europe.
Yeah.
Also is, ravens and crows are both sort of like they're both tied to the harvest, aren't they? Because they
yeah.
Because they love to scour the fields after the reapers have gone out to get all the little bits. They glean just like poor people.
And
Oh yeah, like what's it like in the Bible? Jesus compares his disciples to what's it like consider the ravens,
Yeah.
which do not make trouble for provisions or for attire.
Because they know it's
No, not
provided
attire,
for them.
garments.
Is it?
Yeah, because the Lord is provided for them. Yeah. So even in Semitic culture, there is some esteem granted to ravens.
It's interesting because, touching on an earlier point you made on this, it could very well be, as you said, that someone's like having a jab at the Babylonians by changing it, but it kind of could it also be something to do with the symbolism of it, and they've kind of changed it to be a dove
Well,
because they understand the
well,
symbolism.
as it occurs to me. No. As it just occurred to me, is what it might be is because it's often the Lord. The Lord works through small servants and does great things by humble means. A dove is considerably smaller, less intimidating, less powerful. Like ravens are scavengers. They don't like to kill their prey, but they can when they need to.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not uncommon to see a raven kill a mouse or something. But dove cannot do that. Doves just feed off of worms and sunflower seeds, basically. And doves also, like they are, they're also less intelligent as well. You can make friends with a dove with a wild dove in the sense that if you feed it often enough, it will trust you enough to say sit on your hand. but it will never, like, say, bring you trinkets or help you find food in the way that a raven will.
Mm. And that does remind me the first point you made.
And so, you know, for the what's it? So like basically just the reason why the Lord used the dove to bring the leaf is because that's the sort of thing that a dove would usually never do.
Mm. And
It's sort of a humbler bird than the raven.
and not to stray too off topic, but it reminds me of this recent sort of controversy. Do you know the Yarvin's Hobbits and Elves? That's been going around. Um,
Oh yes,
yes,
I've not actually read it. I've just heard people complain about it.
yes. Well, one of the interesting responses I saw was from. Have you heard of Nathan? Is it C.J. Hood? Um,
Uh, I've heard of him. I've not actually paid attention to him. I don't know what he's about.
anyway, he was saying about how kind of it's in this pointing at the Lord of the Rings. It's kind of through the small things, through the hobbits, through the kind of the lesser
Oh
known, lesser
yes.
powerful creatures of this earth that wonderful things can be achieved. And I don't
Oh
think a
yes,
hobbit was meant to bring
absolutely.
the ring. Well, I don't think a hobbit was kind of intended as a species to travel all the way across Middle Earth and bring a ring into Mount Doom, but that's they did it anyway, and through God achieved
Yes.
wonderful things.
Oh yes. So that certainly is an important thing to consider. Uh, yes, I think that's a it's a very good take, and yeah. So I don't know. You know, maybe some Jewish scholar could tell us something a bit better about this whole thing. But I think that the example I gave about the
Mm.
you know the raven being a great and proud and imposing bird. So then
Yeah,
for it to be outshone by a dove, by a simple little dusty brown creature with a pink chest, is rather the much more impressive sign from God for something so
yeah.
small. A little baseball-sized dusty brown bird to bring something.
Mm.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
think the
but let's get on with it.
yeah, I think the
Yes,
verses
as you were.
I think the verses we struggle with mainly in going through Genesis are kind of just the history, when they're saying, and I think in one of the previous Genesis chapters was about how someone lived for so and so long and had this child and this and that. It's quite difficult to comment on those sorts of things. So we kind of, as you could see in this
Well,
chapter,
just
kind
because it's. Yeah.
of go on.
I was just gonna say, it's like, yeah, but those things are still important because it
Yeah.
gives you an idea of what the world was like then versus what it is like now.
Mm.
It puts things in perspective. Might not be much to talk about, but it's important to remember.
Well, it's like a fact saying, I don't know, World War Two started in 1939. It's important information, but you don't kind of need to comment on it afterwards.
Yeah, yeah, good point. Is that everything?
Yeah, I think so. And I
Okay,
am
yeah.
also by no
No,
means a scholar. I mean, this is one of the first times I've read through
neither am
Genesis.
I. We are a pair of noobs together.
Mm-hmm.
Although, well, I mean, me a good bit less than you. I've probably gone through Genesis like 5 different times in my
Mm.
life, but that was all different times in my life. Those were all years apart.
Mm.
All right, so chapter 9. I shall read chapter 9.
Yes. When you are ready.
Uh, yes. Shall you read out the preface since I read out the preface to the last one?
Yeah. Okay. So Genesis chapter 9. Noah and his sons are commanded to multiply and fill the earth. They are given dominion over all forms of life. The death penalty is decreed for murder. God will not again destroy the earth by a flood. Canaan is cursed. Shem and Japheth are blessed. Yeah.
Anyway, this has been a lovely better get on with the chapter.
Yeah, when you're ready. Continue on.
I am. I am. Right. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand, and into your hand are they delivered. And of course, this is the biblical version of fear. So, although it's true that this is referring to the way that wild animals run away from people or attack people out of self-defense, it's also true that this is meant to say that beasts shall obey people. Yes. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. Flesh with the life thereof, which is in the blood thereof, ye shall not eat. And surely your blood of all your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast I require it, and at the hand of man, and at the hand of every man's brother shall I require the life of a man, or of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God is he made. So I like this because it's basically explaining that, on top of all the reasons why murder is wrong, well, this is actually an idea that I had sort of like as a child, actually, at one point, that murder and so many other things are wrong because you're effectively desecrating the image of God. Because men are made in the image of God. We shall go on, however.
So does necessarily... Does that rule out all killing, or does that rule
I
out...
believe it's referring... I believe it's specifically referring to murder here, since that's what it said in the preface, was that the death penalty is set forth for murder. Be ye fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth, and multiply therein. And God spake unto Noah, and to his sons with him, saying, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, and of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood. Neither shall there be... Neither shall any more be a flood to destroy the earth. Right, And God said, This is the token of the covenant which I made between me and you and every living creature that is with you, for perpetual generations. And I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. So I like this because, like the rainbow, sort of... Well, it's sort of, in this context, almost makes it seem as if God is like like some Native American great spirit that literally has like a big bow made of wood, and that's what the rainbow is. I like that sort of image. I realize that's maybe not entirely what this is supposed to be going for, but growing up in America and learning, various native folk tales and myths when I was in kindergarten and first grade, I rather do like framing the Bible in similar terms.
Well, don't forget, the rainbow was originally kind of Christian symbol, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's why a lot of old Bibles and other religious manuscripts have the sort of the tricolor
Mm.
of uh, red, blue, and green, or sometimes red, yellow, and green. No, yeah. Those are sort of two different tricolors that I believe it's actually red, yellow, and green. Um, very often appear in a sort of like you get rings of them and stuff like that, because that's basically, without modern pigments, that's the nearest thing you can get to a rainbow. And that's
Mm.
sort of like the medieval version of a rainbow, and that's sort of like a constant symbol in a lot of like old Catholic books and things.
Yeah.
A lot of Catholic icons are still made with that rainbow.
Still trying to salvage it from other
Well,
people
no,
who
they're just
use it.
made with that older.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay.
They're just made with that older medieval version of the rainbow with only
Mm.
three colors, so that way it's distinguishable from the, horrible
I
modern
see.
gay stuff.
Mhm.
The old tricolor,
Well,
which is also where I got the inspiration for the Donshire logo.
yeah, I can see that. I mean, even the even this kind of the original LGBT flag, yeah, that rainbow, that's not even used anymore. They use the some awful blend of colours which represent something.
They use the pride swastika now,
Mm, yeah. Well, they've all
the
sorts,
quarter of a swastika.
indeed.
Yeah, okay, no, my goodness, this has been a lovely tangent, but we haven't even finished Genesis 9 yet. We really ought to save our conversations for the end.
As lovely as they are. But carry on.
Yeah, gosh, we're gonna have to, like, edit this and make, like, we're gonna end up with, like, 3 different episodes. Okay, yeah. I do set my bow in the cloud and shall be, okay.
Where even were we?
Already read that?
Yeah, we passed the bow in the cloud.
We're at
Yeah.
verse 14. Yeah. Well, we already read the bit about the bow, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, so off to verse 14 then. And it shall come to pass that when I bring a cloud over the earth, the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you, and every creature of all flesh, and the waters shall come no more, shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh is upon the earth. God said unto Noah, this is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. And the sons of Noah that went forth out of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. And these are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine, and was drunk. And he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Blessed be the Lord God, the Lord God of Shem, right, yeah, sorry. Yeah. And God shall enlarge Japheth, he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Noah lived after the flood 350 years. And the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. So I suppose that's everything. I suppose it's very near midnight for you, so we ought to get any little jolly bits of conversation out of us before so that we can wrap up the show. And what would you like to talk about?
Well, could I ask? So, what were Shem and Japheth doing here? I find it quite difficult to understand.
Oh, right. So, yeah. Ham went to see his father. His father was naked and quite thoroughly asleep, drunk.
Hmm.
And so, and so Ham went to get his brothers, and he was like, "Hey, our father's naked. We ought to go cover him up." And so they went in, walking backwards. They couldn't see him with with a big piece of cloth draped between both of them
Hmm.
to cover him up.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
And they didn't get in trouble because they didn't see their father naked.
Hmm.
But the thing is, if they hadn't gone and done that, probably Noah would have never figured out that Ham had seen him. So it's like, it's
Ah.
just a bit of a thing. Some improper respect was paid to the father.
Hmm.
Uh, and again, this is something that could probably be elucidated on a bit more and a bit better by some Jewish guy, probably. You know what? Jacob from Jacob's Ladder could probably help us. I ought to get him as a guest sometime. In the meantime, however, yeah, so that's a thing. And it also occurs to me if this Canaan, if this Canaan chap that is mentioned here
Hmm.
is meant to be the father of the Canaanites, well, then it occurs to me that this is rather foreshadowing the sort of destruction of the Canaanites at the hand of the Jews, or of Israel, I should say, of the Hebrews.
Yes. It's almost that the people who
Well, oh yeah, and
go on.
yeah, the thing I was gonna say is I forgot to mention earlier, but there certainly are Christians who do live hard lives, but like they still never seem miserable.
Hmm. I guess
There's a
one.
certain kind of honest, humble, poor person that, you know, they're not in an abundance nowadays. At least they're not in abundance outside Africa.
Hmm.
But and I don't necessarily want to say that they're content with their position, but they're not. They don't feel deprived by the lack of resources.
Yeah.
They are concerned with more than material things, and there is like a calm air of assurance. There is something uh, almost monkish about them, in that they are able to live without much material comfort, and yet radiate like a total air of happiness.
Mm. And I guess God kind of gives
Because
you the means with which to deal with some of the burdens and responsibilities you have.
oh yeah, and sometimes that means that you're gonna have a poor life, and you're gonna have the sort of the sometimes that means you're gonna have a poor sometimes that means you're gonna be poor, and you're going to have the sort of the attitude and the resolve to endure that poverty. But sometimes it means that, unlike so many people in this world, he believes that he can trust you with wealth, and you simply ought to live responsibly with it.
Mm.
You ought to give off those what's it? Well, I feel like there's certainly a kind of like out of touch philanthropist that is sort of horrible and evil, and just gives off like the worst vibes imaginable. I feel like most of the rich people that we have today are sort of like that, but and to be frank, there were probably a lot of rich people in the past who were like that as well, a lot of the utopians. But I feel like there is a certain kind of wealthy philanthropist who is able to, who just is like, I've got much, and so I must give much.
Yeah, and one good
Yeah,
way
and
of
and they're just doing their best to improve the world, honestly.
well, one good way of telling whether people sort of are genuine in their philanthropy is their kind of how public they make their donations. I mean, what's that Bible quote to do with trumpets, um, about how you're kind of showing off your kind of goodness and generosity. Um, it's in the New Testament. I can't remember which one it is, but um,
Are you thinking about the widow's mite, or?
um, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have a look in a second. But yeah, it's those who kind of make it private, who don't actually um, show off.
Oh, let not your right hand, or let not your left hand know what your right hand doeth.
That's not the one I'm thinking of, but yeah, that kind of that's
Oh.
the kind of thing I was trying to get across.
Yeah.
I have been recording for about the past.
Oh yeah, right
This
now.
is
So Old Testament, right? So where we left off last was Genesis 7.
Yes, that's the one.
Okay.
Do you want to start off?
Genesis 7 is where we left off. So Genesis 8 is where we shall begin.
Oh, it was. Oh, before we start, it was Matthew 6, 2 to 4, verses 2 to 4. That one about trumpets and talking about their acts of charity.
Yeah, no, I definitely do understand what you mean, and I feel like that is probably the right way to go about it.
Mm.
Like, I feel like there's probably a minimum amount of public charity that a person can be forgiven for
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's okay to
It's not
try
black
and
and
have a
white.
good reputation, but most of like if you're fabulously wealthy, you know, your greatest and most impressive charitable acts should basically be kept completely secret until the time of your death. And the only stuff that you should publicize should basically be like normal token efforts, so that people are like, he's not a monster, but he is like an ordinary rich person.
Mm. It's kind of what you're doing it for. If you look at someone like Bill Gates, or William Fence, I should say, who is
Well, I
he was this great philanthropist who donates all these sorts of money, to these various charities, which I doubt actually go to the people who they say they do.
Oh yeah,
What?
well no, some of it I'm sure does, but the stuff that does is probably rather harmful, like sending condoms to Central Africa so that people have fewer children.
Mm, it's kind of done in the name of political cause rather than genuine, um, you know, good acts.
Yeah. Yeah, it is horrible. So yes, I've got chapter 8 pulled up here. Have you got chapter 8 on your side?
I do.
Okay, and you ready to start recording?
Yep, we're off.
Okay. Hello, 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 beautiful YouTube people. We were away for quite a while because my dear friend, the Englander, was away on a lovely French vacation.
Yes, had
And it
some.
occurs to me at just this moment, Englander, did you check the audio levels to make sure that neither of us are too loud?
I'm looking at them right now, and they are equal to each other.
Okay, so I guess if the audio is oddly quiet as it has been in the past, sorry.
I think.
We are complete novices. There's nothing that we know to fix that
Well,
problem.
from what I can see, um, we should be. You should be able to hear us.
Okay,
Pretty
lovely.
loud and clear.
So as I was saying, my dear friend Englander was on a lovely French vacation. Why don't you tell us about it, Englander, before we move on to this week's lovely lesson?
Oh, okay. Well, I was in the Dordogne region of France, which was it's a lovely area. I was in a more remote area and stayed in this kind of small house of 3 bedrooms, and
Oh, so there's a bit of like the countryside, like a
oh yeah, we
what does
were
a French countryside look like?
well, in the area we were in, it looked it seemed quite like it's rolling hills, almost sort of English countryside, but there was sort of
Yeah, yeah,
fields of
that's what I was gonna
sunflowers.
guess. I was gonna guess is probably like I assume because France is such an old and well-developed country, it's probably like I was going to assume it's probably like a very similar countryside to England, except probably a bit shabbier and probably more abandoned buildings in France than one would expect to find
Yes,
in England.
it's quite remote, or quite sparsely populated in some of the areas we went to. I mean, during kind of driving around the place, it was either fields of sunflowers, kind of old abandoned shacks in some of these villages, and it's very dead. There wasn't any nightlife at all to speak of during the weekends, and
Yes.
there was either that sort of those fields and meadows, or it was just these big forests that we were driving through. So it was quite nice to.
Oh, forests.
Mm,
Oh, lovely. You don't have too many of the. I mean, you've what's it? There's few enough forests in Scotland. I imagine it's even worse in England.
there aren't many. There aren't very many in England, but yeah, so that was quite nice to kind of drive through some of those and just walk through some of them. Yes, had some.
And of course, it also occurs to me, what you do have in England usually isn't like an ancient forest like we have in America. It's usually an overgrown copse where
Mm,
some farmer hundreds of years ago used to be growing hazel for baskets, and then during some land reform or another, it went out of use, and now everything's just a bit overgrown.
yeah, well, thankfully the ancient woodlands that remain, at least some of them are very strictly maintained. Whether they are in a
Oh yeah.
reality or not, I don't know. But from what I've seen, they
Oh yeah.
seem to be still around.
Well, they're trying to rewild it, you know. It's like
Mm,
one of the things that has sort of most surprised me about the UK is like, on the one hand, I do understand why you'd want to bring in bison because the countryside in the UK is relatively well suited to them, you know. It's like you got these rolling hills and grass
mm.
and shrubs and things. No, it's relatively well suited to bison, to those Wisants you've imported from, is it Russia, where those European bison come from?
Yes, yes.
Yes. The only thing is that, like, on the one hand, you've got people doing that. Then on the other hand, you've got, like, reforesting projects, and it seems to me that that rather contradicts with it, because one of the big reasons why bison are important in America is because they maintain the plains and prairies by, you know, eating saplings and knocking over trees.
Mm. So it's kind of
They're,
counterproductive.
yeah, so it, like for reforesting is good, and bison are, I don't know, theoretically, I certainly do understand where Carl Benjamin is coming from when he says it's a crazy idea. It's like, bloody bison! They're gonna trample somebody's car.
Mm.
Yeah, bison actually are quite dangerous. May not be a good idea to put them in a country as crowded as the UK.
I don't know. You could shove them in the Lake
They
District or something.
yeah. Yeah, I've heard about that. The Lake District, that's like where most of the countryside is, or, well, in the there's different. You got different areas of countryside in England, don't you? Because you've got like the southwest with like Somerset and Cornwall,
Mm.
and then you've got the no, that's not the west. That's the east. The southeast is Somerset and Cornwall. Then you've got the southwest, which I forget. Then you've got the sort of middle west coast with Wales,
Mm-hmm.
and then you've got North FC near Scotland, and there's some sort of northeast thing that I'm not aware of.
Well, there's the northeast is kind of Yorkshire way. Um,
Yorkshire, that's
yeah.
where it is.
Then there's the
And there's sort
east.
of Cheshire is dead in the middle of everything.
No, it's a bit to the west. So it's kind of
Uh,
um, it's
Northwest.
it's quite sort of north or east of Wales, kind of neck of the woods.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of the counties around me, which are sort of the more rural ones, apart from London, of course, is
Hmm.
very very flat, really really flat. You can kind of see for miles upon miles. There's no hills whatsoever. And then you go over to places like the Lake
Oh,
District.
well, that explains why London was built there.
Mm.
It's yeah.
Then you go over to the Lake District, and it's obviously nowhere near something like the Alps or whatever, but there's fairly substantial hills around there.
Oh yeah, I know that the UK's got some substantial hills.
Well, they're quite
That's
timid.
pretty much what we have in. Yeah, that's pretty much what we have in Alabama. We've not quite got mountains. We're sort of at the south, the sort of the southernmost range of the Appalachian mountain chain.
Mm,
But most of the state, though, is full of a mixture of sort of like round rolling foothills, each only about like 500 feet tall at most,
well, it's quite
and sort
marshy
of
as well.
weird plateaus. Areas are marshy. Certainly, the valleys are marshy.
Mm,
The south near the sea is marshy, but well, it's wet. It's incredibly wet, but it's
yeah.
not really marshy.
Ah.
The soil is actually usually incredibly dry because it's all clay and it doesn't really hold it onto water very well. It's not
Mm,
very absorbent. Sort of the opposite of living in Alaska, because in Alaska the soil was usually very marshy. Well, parts of the soil were marshy, you know, because there's mountains up there, so there's a lot of good drainage. But the like you could be in an area with like a solid foot of water, you know, you could be like in a great wide marsh, you know, with near a foot of water in just every direction, practically like standing in the middle of a giant shallow lake.
yeah.
And the humidity would still be like on a hot summer day, the humidity would be below 50%. It would usually be below, it would sometimes even be below 30, 40, like
Mm.
you could get like 20% humidity in the middle of a swamp because not 100% sure why, but I think it might have just been like the spongy soil.
Yeah, and it's kind of a completely
Uh,
different picture for you now in Alabama.
oh yeah, because like, the air is wet, but the soil is dry and crackly and full of rocks. Oh yeah, like as, anyway, lovely little geography. All right. I believe this is where the seven no-hide laws that old Claire Caw is so fond of come from.
I look forward to hearing about these then.
Yes. They're not laid out explicitly here, I believe. I believe that they are basically like the sort of list that you have of them is basically
Mm.
the product of sort of Hebrew scholars going through the Old Testament and trying to figure out what was the rules basically before the Ten Commandments.
Mm.
So I believe that they are at
Yeah.
least a somewhat modern construct,
Before we begin,
though perhaps not. Yes?
I just want to ask out of curiosity: does the Quran doesn't use the Old Testament, does it, at all?
It uses bits of it. I believe that it acknowledges that it happened, but it was just like, yeah, the Jews were off doing their own thing over here, and like some of it we agree with and some of it we disagree with.
Mm.
And Abraham is definitely cool and valid, and everything before him we agree with. But no, we don't believe in Jacob or what they believe that he existed, but
Mm.
they believe that Ishmael was the sort of valid son. And you know what? Like, fair enough. Ishmael was born first, and it is really unfair that Sarah abused Ishmael's mother.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, you know what? We're gonna get onto it later, but I think it's good to point out the fact that uh, Ishmael's mother, Hagar. No, Hathor is an ancient Egyptian goddess. Hagar was promised that that the descendants of Ishmael would be like great kings and conquerors, and Islam is the second largest religion in the world at the present time. So
Mm.
it seems to me that was rather fulfilled, and that's also why I'm rather wary of saying or doing anything. Well, not necessarily against Islam. I certainly have beliefs that disagree with Islam, but I don't feel that it is good or appropriate to be against Islam uh, in a in the same way that a person would be like against crime or whatever it is. I feel that it is not correct to say that Islam is bad in any fundamental way, basically because, there are some key parts of their framework which are basically recognized by the Bible as being rather valid.
Well, as the saying goes, we have bigger fish to fry. I think.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. If nothing else, you know, if nothing else, just the fact that Islam is not woke is a
Mm.
reason to align with it. Um, but I do feel that that is definitely that is definitely some work that needs to be done, especially in the UK, Uh, the Conservative Party is basically it seems to me there's nothing that can really be done to get certain sections of the British right aligned with Islam, because even though they agree with each other on like 90% of stuff, Muslims are all immigrants, and that is something that the British right, for valid reasons, can't really cope with. So I feel like there needs to be some kind of a new political movement
Mm.
that basically, I guess what you need is you need something almost like we have with the Mexican and other Latino immigrants in America, where like they get here, they basically want to pull up the ladder behind themselves because they're like, I'm here, I have money, I'm American,
Mm.
they don't want more immigrants coming in after themselves because they know that they have something good in America and they don't want it to be watered down, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think the best kind of pact that the best hope that we could have for kind of a pact or some sort of friendship would be through, at least in England, the imams. I'd imagine they are, at least some of them, not quite as unsavoury as some of the people we've um, been subjected to through immigration.
Yeah, because because like the sort of random people you get in the street like aren't even properly Muslim. Like they're
Mm.
drinking whiskey and stuff.
Yeah.
There are many sects of Islam which permit beer and wine, but not a single one permits any uh, distilled beverages.
I think they interpret it. Those people who kind of just do that, they kind of a Muslim in kind of a racial way, uh, kind of.
I know, which is just horrible, because Islam is supposed to be like Christianity.
Mm.
It's supposed to be like a very much a spiritual heritage, like people that are sort of adopted into the sort of the religious family. It's not supposed to be like Judaism where people are sort of born into it and they don't actually have to follow the rules to remain a member.
Mm. But
But of
unfortunately,
course, I
yeah.
guess that reminds me of something else that rather annoys me about Jews is that Jews don't excommunicate people ever, which is like really annoying.
That's bizarre.
Well, no, I understand why. I've had it explained to me by several Jewish people. They're like, yeah, the temple does no longer exists, so there's not really any central authority,
Mm.
and it would be terribly arrogant and presuming for a random Orthodox rabbi in New York to just excommunicate all secular Jews, and like it's there are valid reasons why they don't do it. It's just infuriating.
Mm. I mean, if they can't excommunicate at all, um, some of the people that will end up in their church, or sorry, their synagogues, will be very unsavoury. You think if they don't gatekeep at all?
Well, it's not that they don't gatekeep in that sense that I'm aware of. It's more well, it's more self-regulatory. The sort of people that they wouldn't want to be in the synagogue are the sort of people who wouldn't want to be there.
Yeah.
I still think it's ridiculous that a guy actually got arrested in England for that. I mean, dang nabbit, it's time for a free speech job.
Yeah. The most the
I
most
realize
infuriating.
I realize that Islam is not the most fond of free speech, but let me tell you what you need to do. You need to get talking with some imams,
Mm.
and you need to convince them that, well, basically that free speech is important because, oh yeah, sure, people will say anti-Islamic things from time to time, but you're allowed to rebut them. And basically, if we ban people saying anti-Islamic things today, it will not be too long until people will be banned for saying pro-Islamic things in the future. Because the evil, tyrannical British government, full of stupid white people, will try to ban all opinions, regardless of how they correlate with Islam.
Yeah. And
Partially because that's actually true, and partially because that's a narrative that I think a lot of British imams would probably be willing to believe.
yeah. I mean that's an avenue. I was going to add as well. It's not just evil white people. It's a very strange, disproportionate number of East Asians. Well, not East Asians, but Southeast Asians as well.
Yeah, but they're basically just the middlemen. It's
Mm.
Well, first of all, it's like you got to spin it as being like the weird, like upper class white people because it will be easier. Well, actually, no. You know what? You could spin it as being anti-Indian as well because it's like ooh Hindus. So you've got like all these evil white atheists and these evil Indian pagans, di disrupting the proper way that things ought to be done.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think
Yes.
I think one of the most um, one of the most promising kind of bits of news that came out in the last few years, which um, well, what was the? Do you remember the? I think it was in Birmingham. This head teacher tried to release some new Pride curriculum and to try and teach kids about Pride, and there were all those Muslim women and men who kind of protested and threatened
Oh
to.
yeah. Well, it wasn't just that. It was like the funny thing was is what happened was like all the white Christian mums and all the brown Muslim dads came out, and they're sort of cooperating. It's like, oh, you don't like the gays? No, I don't like the gays. What are you here for? I do not like the gays either. Oh, lovely. Would you
Mm.
like to have tea later? Yes, but shouldn't we protest first? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so that was a lovely thing that happened, and
Mm.
to be frank, I basically just want to make an entire political party of those people, those lovely, wholesome people.
I do wish that happened more often. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the Abrahamic Alliance, so to
Mm.
speak. Oh, and the initials would be AA. Hmm. I wonder if a certain half Persian rug merchant would be interested.
Yeah. If we added I don't know, a couple of clear them out phrases to our manifesto, they might
Yes,
it might suddenly catch his
indeed.
attention.
Yes. Ah.
We
Mm.
also
But I
have
suppose I suppose the issue is that he's not quite well. He's not quite as based on as us on the old alphabet people question now, is he?
no, no. I mean, he hasn't. I don't think he's commented too much on it, but do you know what his opinion is?
Well, hey, yeah. Well, I mean, he does hang out with the
Oh yeah,
tranny fash, so
yeah.
yeah. No.
But also don't
I
forget
know,
the
but on the other hand, D is also the most delightful person.
yeah. But that's
If
probably
every gay was like D, I if every gay was like D, feel like well, on the one hand they'd just be infinitely less annoying. It's just like yeah, keep it to your private life and joke about it a bit for yeah,
mm, it's almost and his kind of
to be.
the reason why you like him is despite his homosexuality rather than
Well,
because of it, obviously.
I would say in large part, yeah, because D is just like aside from the fact that he's gay, he's very similar to me, because like, well, very similar, I should say, to the way that I imagine I would be by the time that I'm middle-aged, because I love collecting things. I love all the little histories and cultures of the world, and like he's got like a cuckoo clock collection,
Mm.
and he's got, like Persian strongman, iron clubs, and like all kinds of weird things, and he collects art, and he's a professional painter, uh, you know, and uh,
We could be like
and
him
he's
and
traveled across the world. No, I feel like, and he's also, he's 6'6".
is he?
No, he's a little bit more than 6 feet tall. I believe that he probably would be shorter than me in real life, but he's got enormous feet. He's got like size 14 feet.
Mm. Yeah,
Uh,
I've heard about
I
that.
don't though. I actually have unusually small feet for my height. I'm 6'6", but I only wear size 12s.
Still, size 12s is fairly large.
It's a bit big. What size are your feet?
Um, 10.5.
Uh, and how tall are you?
I don't know what. You probably have different measurements though, so that might.
Ah, that's true. Yes.
So I don't know
No,
what.
in America it is inch based, An
Yeah.
American size 12, it means that your foot is 12 inches from big toe to heel.
Mm.
Sometimes middle toe, depending on which one is longer, because because that's that's a thing, in America. We've got such a mishmash of people from different parts of Europe. We've got a lot of people with those weird Celtic feet, with those weird sort of shovel-shaped Celtic feet where the middle toe is longest.
Mm.
Not middle, I should say, the second toe. It would be really weird to see somebody with like a perfectly shovel-shaped foot, like the actual. I mean, can you imagine that?
Mm.
It would look so weird. Okay.
I've just I got up a men's shoe size chart to do some conversions. So you would be 12 is oh, it's only 11 and a half, so it's slightly smaller, but
Oh my goodness. So I think that ought to put that in perspective for you. I'm 6'6", but my shoe size is only 11 and a half by British standards. It's like,
I see.
yeah, I've got oddly small, dainty little feet for my size.
Mm. So I'm shoe size 11 in the US,
Yeah, so
which fits more my
yeah,
height.
so, yeah. Because what is your height? About like 5'11"?
6'2", 6'3".
Oh, 6'2". Oh my goodness. So yeah, you're really close to my height. You're only like 3 inches off.
Yeah, I haven't actually measured myself recently, but last time I was 6'2".
How long ago was last time?
Um, about 6-7 months ago, so I probably haven't grown much since then. I think I'm done with
Oh yeah, because like, how old are you? You're like 18?
18, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, I'm very, very unfamiliar with these stories, so I don't know when they occur within the Old Testament.
Which is sort of ridiculous because you're from the United Kingdom,
I know, yeah.
Well, I mean, partially just, from anywhere in Europe, basically, outside of Bosnia and Albania. Basically, those are the only two countries that, have always, well, I guess Turkey as well, if you want to count Turkey as Europe. Basically, outside of the former, Ottoman sphere of influence, everywhere in Europe, is been solidly Christian for 2,000 years. It's a bit shameful, that there are people who are unfamiliar with the Old Testament.
Mm. Well, there's just been such a lack of teaching of it. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, even the primary school I went to, we had services at this Church of England church every single week, and none of this was taught. It was just kind of, we sang songs and we did this and that. It wasn't. I learnt nothing, basically. Nothing was ingrained into me as a child.
No, and that is improper, because like because you know what they do in my church, even for like the youngest little group of kids, it's called it is called primary, and yeah, there's the youngest is primary, the second youngest is sunbeams, and what they do for both of them. Well, primary is actually just like a lot of like songs and what you mentioned, but that's for like 4-year-olds basically.
Yeah.
The 5 and 6-year-olds in sunbeams, right? Partially it's just because I can't remember, because I don't pay quite as much attention as I probably should. Point is, the little kids in sunbeams, they actually learn, from like 5 years upward. They actually learn about like all these Old Testament stories. It is obviously, like a little bit watered down for them because they're children and they probably shouldn't know about several of these things. But a lot of it is given to them, just pretty much straight up, like, oh yeah, there was Adam and Eve,
Mm.
and then there was Noah, you know. It it's simplified, but they do get like a pretty they get at least an approximation of what all this was.
Yeah.
Even some of the obscure stuff, like the story of Job. My youngest sister, who is in some Sunbeams currently, learned about that this week. Same as everybody else, was having lessons on stuff related to the story of Job.
Yeah, the limits of my religious experiences as a child was with the Old Testament consisted of Adam and Eve, Moses, um, and Noah.
Wait, so they skipped over Noah?
Sorry, Noah as well. Forgot to add that.
I,
So those were the main kind of ones. But
they skip over King David and King Solomon?
there wasn't any of that. No.
My goodness.
I mean,
Well, King David is the one that kids really like because he's got the slingshot and he kills a whopping giant.
yeah, I know. I mean, I can't. For that period of my life, I can't. I wouldn't place too much blame upon myself, rather the failings of the Church of England. But now it's kind of, it is on me
Yeah.
to learn these sorts of things, to pick up where they failed. You still there?
Yeah. Well, so I'm still here. Yes. What I was going to say is, so yeah, it's definitely good to, well, not just to see you bettering yourself, but to rather participate in that and help you with it.
Yeah, and I'm glad to be going through all of this each Genesis chapter with you. It's it's been very helpful so far.
Yes. Well, I'm glad to have been of service, as always. Oh yeah, no. So that YouTube video I sent you, have you watched any of it yet?
The first 10 minutes, yeah,
Okay.
comparing
Well,
Avatar
yeah. So you know
to,
that it's about like Princess Mononoke, one of the greatest animated films ever made. Yeah. Yeah, well, at least in my opinion, I am like. At this point, I think I actually am just well cultured. I used to be like a weeb when I was a kid. Now I only really pay attention to the Japanese stuff that is good. I don't just pay attention to Japanese stuff because it is Japanese, you know? Like I begun reading Moby Dick and lots of classic stuff, so meh.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, I can't imagine you were
yeah,
taught
no,
any
but
of the fictional classics as well during your education.
oh yeah, no, what's it? Well, after first grade, I was basically homeschooled because around the time that I was turning 8 years old, which is when I would have gone into the second grade, which is really the third year because first year is called kindergarten. Anyway, point is, around the time that I would have been going into the third year of my public education, what happened? Oh yes, that the summer before that was when they were implementing like Common Core. They were introducing all the teachers to it, and I don't remember if it was my first grade teacher or my kindergarten teacher, so I'm going to assume it was both of them, approached my parents and basically just said, "This is crap. Your kid is too bright for this. It's going to ruin him. And you're better off just teaching him at home."
Yeah. And that was probably one of the best pieces of advice your family got.
Yeah, I mean, to be a bit fair, my parents probably were a bit too lax in some ways, you know. For the most part, they let me just like pursue my education on my own because, much to my teacher's credit, she was accurate in apparently in her assessment of my intelligence because I've always been like really interested in history and all sorts of brainy stuff like that, and, like animals and so I guess that'd be like history and natural history and all
Yeah.
sorts of things like that. Um, it's just that as a result, I basically ended up like completely neglecting some of the slightly more core things like math.
Mm.
Like, I've got a basic understanding of math. It's probably comparable to most ordinary people. It's just probably not as good as it could. It's probably just not my phenotypic maximum.
Well, you could take foundations of calculus from the
Calculus.
academic
I feel
agency.
like I feel like he ought to just make like a foundations of just math. I feel like there's
Mm.
too many people in this world. I might actually be good enough going into the foundations of calculus. I'm not sure.
What's the difference?
But
Is it just more advanced version of maths?
hold on. I will actually Google this. Well, you know what? I feel like it says a lot about the British public education, not public, state education.
Mm.
I, why is it that public in your country means the thing is private in mine? That's silly.
I I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I realize it's because you have the private schools there as well that are
Mm.
meant for like the children of lords and knights, but again, that just feels silly. Why can't they go to the same, privately owned, privately funded public schools as all the other rich twats?
I have no idea.
Why do we have to separate the common-born rich twats from the high-born rich twats?
Mm.
Seems rather uh just seems silly. But yes, I feel like it speaks volumes about the state of British state schools that you, being 18 years old, don't even know what calculus is.
That's true.
But also it might actually just okay, calculus. Calculus originally called
But do you know what the difference
mm,
is?
seminal calculus. Well, no, because I never paid attention to math as a child
Mm.
because I thought it was boring. And my parents knew that I was a nerd, so they're basically content to like, oh, he's reading books on Roman history, he's watching documentaries about the Civil War. Let's just let him do as he pleases.
Mm.
And that worked out in a lot of ways. Apparently, I know lots of stuff about history, but I know a lot about the liberal arts and things too, but I don't know as much as I should about maths.
Mm.
I went into art for what's it like? I didn't learn about the golden ratio from maths class the way that a normal person does. Learned about it from art stuff. Okay, so let's get on with it. Wikipedia. Hopefully, this is a subject that Wikipedia will not be woke about. Okay? Uh,
I wouldn't
Also,
say
my
so.
goodness, it's 12:01. We better wrap up quickly.
Well,
Okay, so
tell me what this difference is. I'm intrigued.
I will figure it out. I've got the Wikipedia pulled up. I will read it. Uh,
Yeah, I do know quite a bit of. I was fairly decent at mathematics in at school, but
yes.
there are. Yeah, I
So
guess
I
there are
shall read
failures.
it. Yes. Calculus, originally called infinite, infinitesimal, infinitesimal calculus, or
Mm-hmm.
the calculus of infinitesimals, is the mathematical study of continuous change in the same way that geometry is the study of shape and algebra is the study of generalizations of algorithmic operations. Oh dear. Algorithms. Again, geometry is probably the only it's the only like math subject that I enjoy or have any interest in because of well, like I said before, my fondness of art
Mm.
and my love of woodworking, of course.
I quite enjoy the
Mm.
the puzzle side of maths. I liked having having like a question which had multiple stages to work out. So I quite enjoyed. I didn't mind trigonometry and that kind of thing, which we did.
Okay.
Once I understood it.
So yes, it has two major branches: differential calculus and integral calculus. Different calculus concern different calculuses. No, different calculus concerns instantaneous rates of change and the slopes of curves, while integral calculus concerns accumulation of quantities and areas under or between two curves. These two branches are related to each other by fundamental theorem of calculus, and they use the fundamental notions of convergence of infinite sequences and infinite series to a well-defined limit. Infinitesimal calculus was developed independently in the late 17th century by Isaac Newton. One of them old smart British chaps from back in the day, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Gottfried Wilhelm von Leibniz, a German polymath polymath, active as a mathematician, philosopher, scientist, and diplomat. Okay. My goodness, the scholars of history were so much more interesting than the scholars we have today, right?
Yes.
Like nowadays, it's all these specialists who go into, like the theory of eucalyptus leaves or something. Then they end up in the climate cult, and they think that they have some place talking about economics, whereas back in the day, they had these great mathematicians who also studied, trees and were famous and well-skilled diplomats as well. Like, I guess we've got the shadow still of the great, polymath scholars of old, but
There are no new
tis a
ones
dim
coming to the
shadow
fore.
indeed. Yeah. Later work codifying the idea of limits put these developments into a more solid conceptual footage. Today, or not footage, footing. No footage in the 16th century. Or the 17th century, I should say. Today, calculus has widespread uses in science, engineering, and social science. Oh dear. Social science, the cursed branch. So I suppose that's everything. Lovely conversation and all that. Lovely show tonight, I think we got.
Yes.
Anything you'd like to say before we wrap up? You know what? You ought to show your channel because you got 2 whole videos now.
2 whole videos, yeah. It's England. Subscribe.
Yes.
All that sort of thing.
You know what? You ought to. Yeah. Subscribe to my channel, please, since you're watching this. And subscribe to. You know what? We should have had your shill at the beginning. That can be fixed in editing, I suppose.
I suppose so.
And you know what? Is if this ends up being multiple videos, you ought to have the shills at the beginning. It's like, hey, before you watch the video, remember to subscribe and go check out my mate Englander because he's very based, very smart lad.
Well, thank you. I could just I don't want to be plugging my own channel on all of your videos.
Hey, dude, your only subscriber for the time being is me. So you know what? Until you get bigger than me, you got every right to plug on my channel. And then if you get bigger than me, I got every right to plug on your channel, and we'll just alternate like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm a very worthy a very good subscriber.
Indeed.
Even if it's
Oh. Yes. Suppose that's all. So it's just goodbye, everyone. Have a lovely day. I hope that you enjoyed the video.
Goodbye.